The Public Safety Committee is now called to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Jeffrey Boyd,
Present.
Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Cone, Alderman Ornowitz,
Here.
Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderman Kotar,
Here.
Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Mohammed,
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd. Present. Chairman Kennedy,
Here.
Alderman Cone, Alderwoman Spencer, 8 present, you have a quorum.
Thank you. I know we had, again, a little confusion this morning. Neighborhood development, which was originally scheduled for 9 a.m., turned out to be at 10 a.m., so they kind of bumped us in terms of where we were going to be, so we're over here again. We're going to take up we have 2 items on the agenda, the pier plan and then resolution 145. You know, we periodically do a review of the pier plan, and so we'll take that up first. We have Paul Phillip, who's trying to make his way down to the end of the table here. I've passed out to you an update that he gave to me to give out to the committee members that he will be reviewing with us as it relates to the pier plan.
All right. Thank you, Chairman. My name is Carl Filler. I think I know most of you. I went to Mayor's office. And as requested, doing a regular update on the pier plan, which is the
Thank you.
crime prevention plan created by the previous administration. It was sort of a 2-year plan, and we're wrapping up the end of that first pilot 2-year phase. And so I think it's a great opportunity to take a look at where we're at, talk about conversations about how to move that forward. So I'm going to quickly go through some materials that I think you should all have in front of you. Some of our conclusions, some next steps, and then questions for you all or any questions you may have for me. So on this first page here, and I have extra copies if people want any. They're not in color, but if anyone wants any, I'll just stick them here. The first page is just change in the year to date from this year to last year. So you have the 15 neighborhoods, the pier neighborhoods, there's 15 of them that we're focusing on. We selected these neighborhoods based on the number of homicides and aggravated assaults that happen in these neighborhoods. We recognize that that's sort of the major concern of residents, and so wanted to select those neighborhoods that were suffering disproportionately. So you can see here was a mixed bag from last year to this year. About half of the neighborhoods have reduced total crime. However, only 4 of those neighborhoods that we selected have reduced violent person crime, which is what I think most people are most interested in. Homicides this year is about equal to last year, and aggravated assaults are up 16%. So that's the change year to date this year to last year, and that's through the end of September. Now, in the change from 2015 to 2017, so remember this plan came into effect on January 1st, 2016. So 2015, there was no pier plan in place. So this compares the time when there was no pier plan to when there was a pier plan. So you can see here it has gotten a little bit better during that time for almost all of the neighborhoods except for Walnut Park West and Mark Twain had reduced overall crime, and then almost half of the neighborhoods had reduced violent person crime. And in these neighborhoods, homicides are actually down about 22% to 2015. Which I think, and I'm hopeful that this means that some of the pieces of the pier plan were effective. And then aggravated assaults were still up, but much less than in some of the, in the last year. So there was a reduction there from the initial implementation of the plan. On the back page here, if you remember, from the pier plan, we selected these neighborhoods for their proportion of homicides and aggravated assaults. You can see in 2015, about 62% of the homicides in year to date in 2015 were in these 15 neighborhoods. That means of the entire city, 62% of the homicides were in these 15 neighborhoods. Now flash forward to 2017, where less than half of the city's homicides are in these 15 neighborhoods. Again, that there's any homicides in these neighborhoods at all is unacceptable, but we are somewhat pleased that that number has gone down. So even though overall homicides have gone up, the neighborhoods that we focused our attentions on, the homicide rate has gone down. Aggravated assaults are roughly the same, but in a city where we've really seen a large spike in aggravated assaults over the last couple years, I think that's promising that while we haven't solved all the problems, there's been some decrease in them. So that's a high-level summary of the crime statistics that I know were requested last time. The next is the strategies. So for those who have seen the pier plan, and it's still on the city's website, we had broken down the strategies into these sort of 4 buckets. So prevention, intervention, enforcement, and reentry. And so you can see here I went through this and talked about where each of these strategies were. And at the top I have sort of a summary of how many were complete, how many are ongoing, and there's still a couple strategies that are either being reviewed under the new administration, under the new police leadership, as well as a few that are on hold because of legal issues or things along those lines. So you can see prevention, we had sort of 4 strategies there. One was this initial ballot initiative, which did not pass. 2 of them are complete. The GREAT program is back. It's been back for a little over a year now. We're very excited about that. We have continued to work on a neighborhood stabilization team, building out neighborhood associations, as well as continuing to prioritize early childhood education and education overall. As folks may know, Mayor Lyda Crewson recently worked with County Executive Steve Stinger to announce an early childhood, early literacy program, and so we're very hopeful that will impact some of these as well down the road. For intervention, and I think about intervention as kids who are at risk, not all kids, but kids who are potentially going down a path where they may engage in delinquency or crime, or people with mental health or behavioral issues. 2 of these are complete, so the Juvenile Night Watch program, we're able to find some JAG funding to continue to do that, so we're very excited. That's a partnership between the police department and juvenile court in order to do home visits for kids and their families to make sure that the parents have what they need, if the child is still at home according to their requirements. We've also have a program where parents can request that the police department comes and checks their house for firearms in case their child may have a gun or they may be suspicious of that, and they want to have the police department come in and check that. As long as the gun hasn't been used in any crime, the child will not be charged. But that's a program to help link the police department to parents and better build some connections there. And 3 of the other strategies are ongoing there. In terms of enforcement, as you all know, we've had change not just in the mayoral administration, but also change in the police department leadership. And so some of these are still under review. However, there was a couple of these that are complete. You can see item 2 here. We've been working with the Department of Justice to train staff around social media. They've been upgrading the intelligence division. It's a lot of good work's been going on there. We created an armed offender docket in conjunction with the court and the circuit attorney's office about a year ago. I believe currently the judges are reviewing that now to see how that's been going. Finally, we've been working a lot with Women's Voices Raised for Social Justice to improve access to gun locks and gun boxes. So for folks who do have firearms, we want to make sure that they have those safely secured so that they can't be used for anything beyond what they're intended for. But you can see a lot of the enforcement are still ongoing or being reviewed only because we do have a change in administration, both in the mayor and the chief. We want to make sure that that aligns with the new police chief strategies. Finally, reentry, and I'm pleased to say this is probably where a lot of the most successful work has been done. The corrections division and some of our reentry partners have done a great job of expanding their reentry unit. We have several reentry caseworkers who can talk a lot about how individuals can be reconnected to services and get back and connected to the community. We also have a project with the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Minority Health called Relink, where Corrections is working with some of our healthcare providers to make sure that everyone who passes through our jails and exits are able to have access to social services and health services. And also working on expanding a lot of the social service providers that come, education programs that come. There's a program currently, and I'm blanking on the name of it, but and I think we had a graduation, I don't know, Commissioner, maybe 6 months ago with the occupational therapy program. Some 4 or 5 young women went through and very impressed, got opportunity to sort of work on themselves and think about long-term education opportunities. So it's certainly not a perfect system, but I'm very pleased with the progress we've made, which sort of brings us to where we are today, and I know this came up last time. The events of the past month have pushed everything back a little bit, but the last meeting, I think one of the requests was really to have more engagement with this committee about the plan. So we began to have some meetings with some of the aldermen. I don't think either of them are actually here today, but Alderman Cohn and Alderman Spencer sat down with both of them, and my intention after today's meeting is set up meetings, if you're interested, with everyone on this committee to talk about what you'd like to see in any revision of this plan, what things you felt particularly worked if you're in these neighborhoods, or if not in these neighborhoods. Still, we want to know what you think should be done. And then any, obviously, feedback about things that didn't work, would like to know those as well. Things that we've received so far from the other aldermen, particularly expanding youth intervention strategies. There's a real need and desire for us to sort of look at problem properties as relates to liquor licenses and liquor establishments. There's a desire, I think, by a lot of folks to look at the building division and figure out if we can build some more capacity there. Really understand how we can better share police data. I think that's something that people have requested a couple times. And so while a lot of this data is on the police department's website, I think it probably can be a little challenging for some people to fully understand or access in the way they want. So we're going to look at that. And then finally, the idea of social workers either embedded in the police department or embedded in the neighborhood stabilization team. And that's something we're working on actively now with the new Captain Johnson, who's a deputy commander of, I'm not going to remember fully the name of this unit, but community engagement, for lack of a better word. So we're hopeful that we may have something by the end of the year there. So that's where we're at. I'm happy to answer any questions or anything else you may need.
Okay. Questions and comments, Alderman Boyd?
Yeah, Carl, help me understand the purpose of showing percentage change 2016 to 2017, and then 2015 to 2017.
Sure. So 2016 to 2017, just snapshot what's changed over the past year. 2015 to 2017 is really understand what impact this plan may have had since when we first created it to where we are today. So that's sort of the purpose there, but I can talk more in detail about what some of these items may mean.
Okay, I think I might have brought this up in a previous meeting, you know, as far as benchmarks and how many people we serve, how are we measuring the outcomes and the success of the plan?
So the outcomes are measured twofold. I mean, I think the most important outcome for us obviously is reduction in homicides and aggravated assaults with firearms. I think that's what people being injured and people dying is the number one concern. But beyond that, these strategies, the ones here, those are sort of our, I would say, intermediate outcomes. These are the things that we believe are going to get us where we need to go. So as these get checked off, as they're completed, as we, do the GREAT program, and that's something that I think what I hear you saying is that potentially knowing how many kids were participating in that, that's something we can definitely work with the school district to try to get that information as well.
Right, because one of the things that I struggle with when we fund different organizations and programs is, especially when it comes to crime prevention, everybody gets to take credit for it, but you have no idea who's making an impact. And I think it's important that if we look at how many people are being served, how many people are being connected to resources, where there's some real success stories are, that would be more meaningful to me, to make sure that we're not just spinning our wheels. Because as you go through all of this, there may be some program that, 1 out of 5 we don't really need anymore because it's not as effective. But when it gets grouped into, 4 additional programs, then it could be overshadowed by the success of the other programs.
We could definitely work on that, and I think we can work about creating an evaluation plan so that you can see sort of how this is moving forward.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. No further questions.
Alderman Vaccaro?
No questions.
Would you excuse Alderman Collins who's in this other meeting, and Spencer? Alderman Arnowitz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I echo what Alderman Boyd says, but still looking at these, the stats here is still just alarming to me. And peer programs looks like they're working somewhat, but I think who takes the credit for it? The one gentleman I've known for years, James Clark, I know he's out there and he tries, and I give him a lot of credit. But, and I don't know if this would fall under a different venue, but I think one of the main things this city has to work on is, first of all, we need money to tear down vacant buildings. And that would be a start as far as crime, because a lot of crime happens around vacant buildings. I go back to the young lady that was kidnapped and they left her for dead in a vacant building. So, that would be a major step moving in the right direction. Let's start, getting rid of vacant buildings. I mean, I ride all over and, O'Fallon Park and a lot of areas, there's so many vacant buildings up there, and it's a shame. Walnut Park still has some beautiful homes up there, but then you see a nice, beautiful home and the building's been vacant for 15, 20 years that was never addressed. So, a lot of the newer aldermen that represent North St. Louis really have a challenge, because they weren't left there because of their fault, they weren't even there. And, you know, over the years, the city had money and it just dwindled away, wasting money on other things. So, you know, that's one thing I would like to see done, is more money. I mean, you know, when you start tearing down vacant buildings, and you got lots, hopefully, we can find developers, if somebody wants to buy the property, you know, and reinstate things up, building a house or whatever, but vacant buildings is a big part of crime, whether you realize it or not. And I'll be the first to say it. So, figures still stick out at me. I mean, I see a percentage of 1% and 2% over there, but I think we just have to somehow figure out how to make better progress. So that's basically, and I'll be quiet after that, but that's my main concern. And I like these programs, and I'm hoping they work, you know, and then I can ramble on, you know, and I'll just say this, we need to do something with our school system. It's horrible. I mean, it's completely horrible. All of our tax money going to the school board. I'd like to see some money invested back in a couple of schools and reopen them, where it's closer to the neighborhoods for kids to walk to school or their parents bring them. You know, education is very important in this city and everywhere. We have to educate kids. And, you know, we have to somehow pursue that between us and Jefferson City. So I'll be quiet now.
I appreciate it,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you. Alderwoman Hubbard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for coming. I am just curious as to when you may possibly revise the plan some, because I'm looking at the 15 neighborhoods on here, and I guess I'm concerned, is this updated information? Because like several neighborhoods within my ward aren't in these neighborhoods, and I mean, we've had multiple murders this year alone, so I'm just curious as to when you're gonna step back and take a citywide approach to see if maybe crime has shifted some from these neighborhoods to other neighborhoods who weren't included in this plan, because I think it's very important, especially when, you know, we're coming through this committee and allocating almost $1 million to programs that actually service these neighborhoods, when I know neighborhoods in my ward, the worst demographics aren't included in this, so I'm concerned when you'll revise it.
Yeah, and so I think that when we have conversations with the aldermen, each of you, we'd like to hear that feedback. There are some citywide strategies in the plan. I sort of focus this mostly on the specific ones to these neighborhoods, but, and it was a hard choice with those 15 neighborhoods. I mean, number 16 doesn't mean it doesn't need help or deserve assistance. And so getting some feedback from you on that will be helpful, but yeah, we will be revising these. These numbers are accurate as of the end of last month, so they're relatively up to date. But we're definitely open to changing whatever you all may think.
Okay. So have you looked at any other neighborhoods that aren't a part of?
For this,
15?
I haven't, but
Oh,
we'll do that and get that.
Okay,
Get to
because
you
there
when
may
we-
be higher crime rates in other neighborhoods that aren't included in this case. No further questions.
Alderman Muhammad?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, out of 15 neighborhoods, only 3 neighborhoods are in South City. And what I'm concerned about, when I look at enforcement, the police want to work with the Board of Aldermen to increase officers and maximize efficiency. Well, I think we do need to maximize our efficiency and productivity in the department, but I'm concerned with over-policing poor neighborhoods. And out of these 15, 12 are in North St. Louis, and three are my ward particularly. Is there a real plan to tackle that? Or to exactly how you're going to police underserved communities already? Because when you look at black communities in North St. Louis, they're overserved and underserved at the same time. How do we fix that? And is there a plan in place to address that?
Yeah, so I think the big thing we're obviously working on right now is identifying a permanent leadership in the police department. So I know some of you were involved in some of the meetings with the search team. And so I think that came out in every single meeting that we did during the Citizen Advisory Committee, and every single meeting we had with aldermen and key stakeholders, including the police department and other, was really solving that issue, because I think almost everyone identified that as a concern, that we have a great police department that does great work, and we have a lot of folks out in the community doing work, but ultimately we still have these high levels of violent crime. And there's concerns about whether or not we are doing everything the way we should be doing. And so I think whatever that next permanent leadership may be that someone from within the department or someone external from the department, that individual will have that as probably job number one. So while we're working on that now, I think we want to make sure that we align that well with that new leadership that comes in hopefully by the end of the year. So I know that doesn't fully answer your question, because obviously you're probably hoping that I have that exact answer now. But I think our answer is we want to choose someone who can lead the department and get us where we need to get, so that communities feel safe, that they trust the police, violent crime goes down while trust goes up. And I think that's doable. We've seen it in other communities and other cities across the country, and I think hopefully through the input of the Citizen Advisory Committee, input from all the community members we've talked to and the elected officials, that we can get there. In the short term, trying to buff up our engagement strategies, trying to do more partnerships in the police department, youth-serving organizations, faith-based organizations. I'm hopeful that we can get there, but that's something that will be the number one charge of the new police chief, whoever that may be.
Gotcha. Now, in regards to a comprehensive crime plan, because I didn't see it in your summary here, just a strategy update. But anywhere in this plan, do you intend on working collaboratively with the Circuit Attorney's Office?
There's several actually strategies in there that are intentionally, actually some of them are led by the circuit attorney, others are collaboration with the circuit attorney and the police department, or circuit attorney and problem properties. We do a great project now with the police department and circuit attorney's office called Police Prosecutor Partnership Initiative, where they have a gun crime intelligence center. They provide a lot of support to victims. And that grant, that's newer than the peer plan. We got that during the time of it. And I'm sure the circuit attorney's office and police department would love to give you an update on that. I don't have all the details on it. We also have the neighborhood ownership model under the previous circuit attorney that I believe is still continuing now. I don't know where that is in terms of priorities. I know there's a lot of things on the circuit attorney's plate right now, and they're just trying to get up to staff and that sort of thing. But I'm hopeful that that partnership can continue, because again, effective public safety can't be done without good cooperation between the prosecutors and the police, as well as protecting our residents who come forward, and supporting those individuals who may have been victims. So there is stuff in the plan around the circuit attorney. This is just sort of the high level stuff, but I can send you the full plan where there's some information about neighborhood ownership model, police prosecutor partnership initiative, and some other pieces as well.
Okay. Thank you, Carl. I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Alderwoman Boyd?
Yes, I keep hearing you saying that you have to, thank you first. I keep hearing you say that you have to, go back and look at some of the plans and revitalize them or revitalize the peer plan. But I guess my frustration is, and I'm speaking all the way back from a person in the community that was an elected official, we're 190 behind you all trying to get it right. So that's where I'm at. When I first saw this peer plan, I was shocked, because my first question was, who knew about it? Because as being in the community's not aware of it. And I'm with Alderwoman Hubbard. You have neighborhoods in here that's not in here that are greatly impacted. And it's not just about homicide or aggravated assault, it's about the demise of those communities, and those people have been totally neglected. So I guess my question, one is, you said reinstate the gang resistant education training, and you said it's complete, so how is it complete?
So I think there's about a dozen SLPS schools that Captain Perry Johnson and others from the juvenile unit have been going to for the past year or so, teaching kids in the elementary school level, and there's some other versions of it in the middle and high school level, sort of how to resist peer pressure. Imagine like a DARE program that's a little more effective, I guess is how I would talk about it. And it has been going on. They have several hundred kids have experienced this program.
So are they in the neighborhoods that we're targeting?
Yeah, these schools are almost exclusively based in these neighborhoods. Now, where the kids come from, obviously kids in SLPS can kind of come from all over. So,
Right.
and we can't really get where the kids' like home addresses, but we feel confident that these schools, being in neighborhoods of high need, those kids are probably coming from the surrounding neighborhood. And so while we can't say there's 50 kids come from this school from the peer neighborhoods, while 40 don't, I feel pretty confident that these schools are receiving, these neighborhoods are benefiting from these programs.
Okay, and I guess my concern again is, and from being in the community, you targeting law-abiding citizens. And when I say that, you said you ask for parental consent to search minor areas to see if you get the criminals off or get guns. Well, I guess my question is, and I keep saying this, they talk about the gun law and all of this. The criminals don't go to the gun store. The criminals that's in the house with the mama's not gonna call the police because the mama is petrified of the kid that got the gun in the house. So I don't see anything in here that's gonna help that mom, because from working in the community, I've encountered too many mothers that won't say anything because they're fearful for their lives and the siblings' lives of that person. So in this plan, there's nothing to address that, to help that situation. When you elected as an alderperson, and 30 days after you elected, you have 7 murders in your ward. That didn't go from people going to the store buying a gun. That went to JoJo selling the gun on the street and giving it to the people. So I'm real clear, in my community, we have to focus on those people, those issues, to help those parents. Because if we don't, right now we're 190, we'll be at 200. We're not gonna save any lives. It's not gonna, I'm gonna continuously lose at 6 years old, 2 years old. I'm not gonna win this battle. So I'm real clear that this plan needs to be updated, and it needs to have people at the table that know the neighborhoods that they're in, so they can fight this to help you all get better information. I'm just clear about that.
No, I appreciate that, and I think that's one of the reasons we'd like to meet with you over the coming weeks, and so I'll
Okay.
be reaching out. And to be clear, the consent to search program is you're right, it's not necessarily reaching out to kids that are currently doing bad things, but they may have a friend who asked them to hold a gun for them or something like
Right.
that, and the parent may be frightened. And so this gives an opportunity to know that the child won't be charged or get in trouble, but still the police can come and safely remove that firearm, and then potentially follow up on wherever that gun originally came from. But you're right, that program is for a very small subset of kids who may have parents that are just a little worried about what's going on. But you're correct, and I think the focus, I know the police department is working on this now, is really identifying and focusing on those individuals who we know are terrorizing our communities.
Right.
So as I talk to you and the other members of the board on the committee over the next couple of weeks, the more that you can give me from your perspective, knowing the neighborhood best, that would be certainly very helpful, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
First, I'd like to just say to you, this report is far better than we've gotten before. It makes it a little bit clearer
Good.
and helps us to better understand the benchmarks as you're getting closer to them. There were a few things raised here today that could be added as well. The red items here, these are increases or?
Yeah, those are increases, so I just want to make it clear what was going up and what was going down being better, so green and red.
And then did not SLDC have a portion to play in this?
So they have a portion in the original plan to talk to each of the aldermen about how they can be better supporting them in economic development activities. My understanding is at one point that Mr. Williams and others were reaching out to the aldermen sort of to figure out how they can be better helpful. I thought that happened. If that hasn't, then I'll follow up with him.
And then, are there, for example, the board focused the Prop S dollars on these 15 neighborhoods for a youth program. Are there any other actions you feel that the board can do to help?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think there's one in the short term that would be fantastic. I know a lot of people have been calling for social workers to be better connected to the police department, neighborhood stabilization team, and there's a group of both police and social service providers working on creating a plan. And if that were to be done in time and be submitted to this RFP, I think that would be fantastic, and I'm sure they'd be happy to talk about it in more detail. But I know that's something that's potentially happening very soon, and we would love your support. And then after, you know, we can prove it works with some of the Prop P money, maybe the city can adopt it with its own general revenue so that you can use your money for something else at another time.
Are there any other follow-up questions from members of the committee? You know, we're doing this periodically, so we'll also I try to give you a little bit more notice
Oh, that's
so
fine.
that you could have the report to us before the meeting. If not, if there's no other questions or comments,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, please stay. All right, we'll now take up, I'm trying to give you space over there to get to the seat. We'll take up Resolution 145. Alderman Vaccaro. We're sorry for those who have to stand up. We had to shift the room, and there's only so many seats in here. Alderman?
So, Resolution 145 was brought up, I guess, a week ago, and I appreciate the fact that we're here today to talk it over. I did talk to my colleague, John Mohammed, who I actually have respect for. I'd like to pass it through the way it is. He would ask that it would be amended to all responders, including firefighters, which, again, I also have respect for the firefighters. I'd like to make a go of it the way it is. I do appreciate that all the responders, whether it's fire, and I have kids in both fire and police. And where my son was at, he was on actually 3 days straight, 3 24-hour shifts straight. He was out in the county during all this, so I do think it's important that, you know, we would also include firefighters as well, but I'd like to at least make a go of it the way it is. You know, I think the police had, during all this, has done a pretty good job. I know that some people would disagree on some points, but I also think they've shown a lot of restraint, considering that, you know, some of the protesters throwing things in, and it's my understanding that 30 police officers actually were injured. I know that the police officer that guards us here at the Board of Aldermen had got a concussion. That's why we haven't seen him at the meetings. He's been in and out of the hospital. So this, you know, well, and I will say this was in response to John Mohammed's, you know, so I do want to show that there's another side to everything, that there, if we're gonna come together as a community, it's gonna happen at the table. It's gonna happen when we realize that there are issues on both sides, and we agree with a lot of things on both sides. So I would respectfully, and I know it's just with us, and I had talked to the chairman, and I didn't bring anybody with me. I would respectfully ask that we pass it out the way it is. Now, if someone on the committee does make an amendment, it's all gonna be up to votes anyway. But I would respectfully ask that we pass it out as it's written.
Comments and questions from members of the committee, Alderman Boyd?
Sure. When I think about passing resolutions, I think of events that have occurred and a way that we recognize events that have occurred. When I read the resolution, it's ongoing. I mean, what our police department is doing today is facing with dealing and managing the protest movement is ongoing. It's like business that's not finished. Now, I certainly respect and recognize the fact that our police officers put themselves in harm's way unselfishly for us every day, and should be always applauded and commended for that. I'm just a little concerned that this could be disingenuous. It's a tit for tat. And it's an event that is ongoing. My biggest challenge is it's an event that's ongoing and that we're recognizing efforts that are in the midst. It's kind of like, you know, someone's going through a master's program and they're halfway through, then all of a sudden we celebrate, you know, the fact they're in a master's program, but they haven't completed the master's program. I think that this resolution at this time, you know, further divides the community only because of its timing. You know, notwithstanding the fact that we have a tremendous amount of police officers do phenomenal work every day. And there are probably only a small percentage of our police officers that do bad things. Because overwhelmingly, most of them do good things. Just like in our communities. 90% of the people in our communities are good people. The Wells Goodfellow neighborhood that I represent, the Hamilton Heights neighborhood that I represent, overwhelmingly people in that neighborhood are good. But there are a small percentage of people that are bad and they overshadow all the good. I want to support a resolution recognizing our police department, and I think we should. I'm just a little challenged, and I'm only speaking for myself, that this is unfinished business and that we may be premature at recognizing all the hard work, because there's probably hundreds of more hours of overtime individually for police officers, where they're gonna spend time away from their homes and their loved ones and miss out on the fun times and good times of being family people. So I'm just a little challenged by the timing, and of course, timing is everything. It certainly doesn't speak to the fact that I do not support police officers. Let's be clear about that. But timing is everything.
Well, and this was in response to John Muhammad's, that actually upset a lot of people. that,
Sure.
You know, my kids, and I'll speak for my kids that are in the police and fire department, that felt like this was just a punch in the gut to them.
Right.
And I feel at that time it's important to let them know that we do appreciate them.
Right.
And this is why I asked this at this time. It's,
And let me speak to that just a little bit, because I've had commentary and I've had comments. I've been, you know, beat up on a little bit about that particular resolution. A lot of people in my community felt that that resolution was unfair. But here's how I read the resolution. I read the resolution as a way to honor a mother who had lost a child, who had nothing to do with what happened. That is how I read that. I read that as an opportunity for us to elevate a conversation about some disparities that are going on in our community. In no way whatsoever did I think that we provided laudatory comments about who Anthony Lamar Smith was, that he was this champion for St. Louis that provided a lot of positive aspirations for people. That's not what I read in the resolution. What I read in the resolution was a little history about who he was and a tragic event. Now, I would personally say maybe the resolution could have been crafted in a different way, whereby people could have had a better understanding, but it was what it was, and everybody has an opportunity to walk away from that, the text, and feel the way they feel about it. But what I don't want to do is provide a precedence at this board whereby we do tit for tat because we don't like something that somebody did or something somebody said. I don't think that's fair, and I don't think that's good policy that we start doing stuff like that. And again, this is gonna put us at odds. There will be people that take the comments that I said this morning the wrong way. But I wanna be clear again on record. I support my city and I support everybody in our city in their prospective places, period. I love all city employees. I have the utmost respect for all our emergency responders. Again, I think the timing is wrong. I think we need to sit down and have more conversation about how we do business and how we respect each other. And I just don't like a tit for tat.
so last week, we had a meeting that was basically held out of order, but it was held. And it offers to bring the chief of police in, or asks to bring the chief of police in, when we could simply just ask him, and he would come in. So why would we not support something like this if we would support something like that? I ask that this be passed out and be allowed to be voted on at the full board. I think that we don't pass it out, I think it's gonna, I would just say that I would ask we pass it out.
Now, I would suggest that one doesn't have a lot to do with the other. I would think having the chief of police come in and talk about what's going on out in the field
But
and
do
how
you-
we can do things better.
But
is-
do you agree that the chief does not need a resolution to come
I
in?
agree.
So that's what I'm saying, because at the meeting when I said that was a stunt, if he needs a resolution to come in, we did that before with the Zoo Museum District, where they didn't wanna come in, and we did a resolution, and we had to go through a lot of whatever to get them in here. But the chief would show up, he was texted during that meeting, he would've showed up even in that meeting. We do not need a resolution to bring the chief of police in, yet we passed one.
Okay,
So I would respectfully ask that this resolution be passed out of committee.
okay. No further questions.
Alderman Orlowitz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joe, I mean, Alderman, I'm sorry.
Joe's-
I think the resolution that was passed last week out of public safety was not a shot in forcing the acting chief to come down.
Do you think, I'll ask the same question, do you think?
Can I
that the
finish,
chief of police
can I
needs a
finish my
resolution?
comments first?
Sure.
No, and I do believe, I think the alderwoman from the first ward even said we didn't really have to do a resolution. So maybe we just work on a better way to address things. But I personally, I don't think it's a shot at anybody. You're just doing a resolution asking them to come down and speak on different things. I personally don't see nothing wrong with that. The other thing is, and I'll probably vote for this, but I gotta be honest with you. I think, you know, are we gonna turn into, next week, we're gonna have a resolution for something else for a different group, and then the week after, and the week after that. I think a lot of people in St. Louis, black, white, Bosnian, Chinese, Korean, whatever, support the police. And I'll say this again, Joe, 90% of people who live in North St. Louis is probably, you know, the most crime-ridden area. All right, they support the police. You have a small percentage everywhere who just doesn't. And I think if we just keep doing resolutions, you know, we're not gonna make any progress and move. So again, and then I feel like, you know, you come up with that resolution, and you said the police feel like they were punched in the gut, probably. But then at the same time, I've heard a lot of police say they're insulted because you come up with the resolution after passing one week before or 2 weeks before that. You know, everybody's entitled to their opinion, and I support police. I support first responders. So, with that being said, I just personally think, you know, it's a tough job all the way around, and it really is. Most of the policemen we have in the city now, the average years of someone being on right now is 10 years, 8 to 10 years. So, you know, compared to 30 years ago, the average age was, or the average years of service of a policeman was about 20, 21 years. So, you know, police never have a problem, and I think we have to, you know, take steps forward instead of resolutions all the time, sit down and get better relationships going with the community, this, that, and everything else, and they're willing to do that. But again, even with that being said, Joe, I don't really have a problem with the resolution. I just think, you know, if we can pass this resolution, I hope we're moving forward on doing community engagement with the police and everyone involved.
And I would agree.
And I think that's the main thing, you know, so, you know, do police maybe need more training? Sure. Can we get the bad apples out of there? Hopefully, I think so. I think we should have enough good policemen that's gonna step up as we move along. Other than that, I don't have anything else to say, Mr. Chairman. I'll be quiet.
Alderwoman Hubbard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think after a while, we'll start to sound like a broken record in regards to all this, but, I'll use your words, Alderman Vaquero. Since this incident took place, there have been a lot of stunts pulled at the Board of Aldermen, and it's my hope that we get past it, because clearly we were elected to lead, and it puts members of the board in an awkward position when, we pass resolutions such as this, because if you vote one way, you're perceived as being anti-police, or if you vote one way, you're perceived as being anti-protesters, and I mean, you don't do this job without, wanting to see the city move forward and wanting our citizens' rights to be protected and wanting our police to be in a position to do their jobs. And, of course, a lot of us support police. We uphold them. That's why we pass bills down here to make sure that they get the proper raises and stuff that they need. So, I just say that at some point, somebody's gonna have to be the bigger person and not keep this situation, moving forward where it's more divisive opposed to bringing us together, because resolutions like this, and I definitely support our police officers. They do a job that most of us couldn't do if we wanted to, but I mean, we just have to be honest. It was a tit for tat situation. Several other resolutions were, in my opinion, because the last resolution, it made me feel crazy. I'm like, oh, we are that bad off that we have to have a resolution to get the chief to come before us, and we know we're not that bad off.
But yet we passed all these things out.
But
And I'm
but
just
that's
simply
because
asking that
as a colleague, you all are continuing to put us in these awkward situations to where we just really don't, wanna ripple the water, but really we need to get down to business and do what we were elected to do and move forward and not get caught up in this tit for tat, because it does not benefit anyone.
And
It further divides us.
it's not that, I agree that we need to start working together. I talked to John just shortly ago and told him we need to move forward together, but I would ask that my resolution get passed out.
I'll just say, I just hope that we can get past this. I mean,
You-
I support our police officers, yes, I do, and if I vote no on this, I don't want it to be perceived as if I don't support police officers, but quit putting your colleagues in an awkward situation. This goes for everybody who's spent these resolutions out here, because ultimately, we wanna move forward, we wanna move our city forward, we have some issues, we have some problems, we want to be effective and work on them, and to get us in the right place, and this type of stuff does not,
Well, it shows
it does not at all.
It shows the other side of the coin. I agree.
We see it,
that
we vote
have
and
to
support
come-
our police
we
officers
have-
every day down here.
We have to
so.
come together. We have to come together, and
Well-
we really do. There's no question that is we can actually move this city forward, and we really need to move this city forward. You're familiar with a lot of legislation I'm working on with the jails. You know my position, where I'm at with Captain Cousins. I mean, you know where I stand on a lot of stuff. And I agree, we need to move forward, but I also know that this, again, just looking at my own family members, 2 in the police, 1 in the fire, how down they were, and friends. I mean, since that is a group that I would tend to more hang out with because they're friends of my family or people that grew up in my house, how down and depressed these guys were, that they felt just unappreciated. And I felt compelled to say, look, we do appreciate you guys. And, is that funny?
Let's keep our attention.
Yeah, like,
Okay.
Well,
So,
I'll
and
just-
in response to Larry, yeah, there were people there were police officers that were there were police officers said they were mailing their resolutions and their proclamations in. Because if we're gonna do one thing, then it's completely useless. But I think we start moving together when we acknowledge that.
well, I'll tell you this, I acknowledge our, police officers, I support our good police officers. I will not be voting in support of this, and it's not a shun against police officers at all, but I just feel that these type of resolutions continue to divide us at a time when we need to be working together.
And the other ones didn't.
I mean, they put us in an awkward position too, but one thing I can tell you that came out of those other resolutions that I had no idea about. If we have officers walking around with a civil disobedience team patch on with a gas mask, I am totally offended by that. So that's an issue that that's what we need to be talking about.
Well, and that-
Not about do we or do we not honor police officers. We need to be talking about situations like that.
And that's when we asked the chief to come in, that we don't need a resolution for, to ask him and say, look, that seems disrespectful, and we would like those removed. And I would be willing to bet, rather than having a resolution and doing all the stuff and all the steps and wait until next week, or whenever the chief's gonna come and talk to us, we could have probably addressed this 2 or 3 weeks ago with a simple phone call. To say, this is offensive, they should remove them. But instead, we're dragging this out a lot longer than it needs to be dragged out.
Something like that, that's something that anybody in leadership should have seen and known that it was offensive. That's not something that should have had to come before the Public Safety Committee, before our eyes, would be on it. That was deplorable, and I was really taken back by it. I mean, that was horrible. I don't even know whoever approved that, or if it's still in motion or not. That no one should have permitted that, but I will say this. I support good police officers, but I'm not gonna support this resolution because I think it continues to stir the pot when we need to simply stop and move forward as a city.
But I would still say we
I don't have
supported
any
the other
further
resolution. I'm sorry, but I still say we've supported the other ones.
I just want to point out two things. One, the question before the committee today is not whether we support the resolution or not. The question is whether this should be sent back to the full board for consideration by the full board. That's the same thing that I pointed out on the other resolution sponsored by Alderwoman Tyus. When a resolution is introduced and goes to committee, the first question, the only question that the committee has before it is not whether or not it supports the resolution. The question is,
Send it back.
does it go back to the full board for consideration? So that we're clear what the vote would be about today, not whether or not we support it. Two, it is common practice in legislative bodies in America to have a resolution that calls for an investigation. That is not unusual, nor is it an anathema. Committee chairs do have the power to call in the various department heads in the area that that committee is given the authority to oversee. However, a resolution that calls for an investigation sets out the parameters for those investigations and usually give you a time period by which to report back your findings and recommendations. A chair could do that, but the chair would be doing it on their own authority and typically will not have all those provisions on it. So I don't want any confusion here that a resolution calling for an investigation or having the chief to come in is strange and unusual. It is not. It is how legislative bodies in America work. Then I also want to clear up the reasons, what is the real question before the committee today? Okay? So, as the oldest member here sitting on this committee, not the oldest in age,
Yeah.
or not in terms of age, but in terms of seniority on the committee. That takes us to Alderman Folger,
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Muhammad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman, me and you have talked several times about this resolution. And it is in direct response to a resolution I passed honoring Angela Moore Smith.
Sure. I will agree to that.
Now, you already answered the quality of your intent on introducing this. I can't support it because it's not genuine. I won't support it. You didn't do it because you truly wanted to honor the police department.
I do truly want to
No,
honor
sir.
the police
You
department.
did it because I introduced a resolution honoring a black man that was shot by a white officer.
No, that's
And it
not
was,
why I did it.
I'm talking on,
Okay.
it was controversial, yes. But when you look at the situation and circumstance in which the young man died, that was controversial too. When you have a police department that's racially divided, that's controversial. When you have a police department that has a corrupt history, that's controversial. So let's talk about that. If you wanna pass a resolution honoring a police department, I say you need to amend it and include the police department, the sheriffs, the fires, the correctional officers, any first responder, anybody that's in public safety. I say you need to put this in this resolution in. Because the resolution in its current format only says F black people, F protesters, F how they feel. You saying that cops want to send in resolutions that they received previously from the board because the resolution not passed? So what? They not dead. They don't live in poverty-stricken neighborhoods. They not being over-policed. They not being under-policed. This resolution is ignorant. I think the sponsor is ignorant in his intent for introducing it. Alderman, I like to consider me and you friends. And I think that we will remain friends after this and continue to work together. But this resolution is BS, and it's a slap in the face to black progress.
All right,
And it's a salute to white supremacy.
all right.
And first off, I agree we'll be friends. We were friends, we are friends, that's a fact. But this is in response because, again, I think that after that resolution was done, that a lot of police officers felt very beat up, very offended by that. And so, yes, this is in response. It's not disingenuous. Disingenuous would be if I wrote something honoring a specific police officer or anything like that. This is just to let the police know simply that we appreciate the work they do, that we don't judge by one police officer. This is letting the police officers simply know we do appreciate them. And we do need to let them know, we do need to move forward as a community, and we have a lot to talk about and a lot that we need to work together on, and that's a fact. And I don't think that saying, I mean, and that's your opinion, that this was disingenuous. It's not. It's meant to serve a purpose. The only purpose it's meant to serve is that we let the police officers know that we appreciate the hard work they do. That's all that's in here. It's really nothing else in this resolution that says, you know, again, specifically one police officer. No, this is just to say to police officers that we appreciate the work they do, that they spend a lot of time away from their family, and that, you know, again, I think the number's 30 police officers that were injured, you know. Yeah, anyway, I'm sorry. That, you know, police officers were injured, but we do appreciate our police officers, and that's all this is in response to say. It's not to say that whether or not, if any one police officer was doing the right or wrong thing. It doesn't, yours stated that you felt and believe, and it was voted on and passed out on the floor. You know, this is not honoring one police officer. This is just saying that the police officers that are out there working for us, that we appreciate them. There's really nothing more to this resolution. I was very careful in how I wrote it. I tried to make sure that in it said, it added in here that it, you know, it protected also, I can go through it real quick. Also allowed individuals' rights to peaceful assembly and give expression of their feelings of frustration. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't say, it says that the police were out there, and it says that, you know, it also adds that the protesters are out there and they're frustrated, and the police out there allowing them. So I don't see this as anything more than a resolution, just to say, we appreciate the police. It doesn't say we like one officer over another. Is there some police in there? Absolutely. Or there's some people out in communities that are bad. There's a lot of great people in the communities. You know, my little brother, and I know I bring this up all the time from Big Brothers and Big Sisters, he today is going out to Chicago. He's now joined the Navy. We've gone a long way. I've been with Michael since 14 years old. We need to talk about mentoring. We need to talk about how we move communities forward. And that's only gonna happen when we all come together as a group. But this resolution was not made to dishonor anybody or honor any one person. This resolution is simply to tell the police that we appreciate them, nothing more. And that was the intent of this. There was nothing disingenuous about it.
If you wanna tell police that, you can send them a thank you card. I don't think you need a resolution from the city.
That's fine.
The same way you say police officers feel disrespected, so do protesters.
Right,
So do black
absolutely, then let's
people,
come
they feel
together, we need to come together.
Okay, so that doesn't happen with this resolution. And I share the exact same sentiments as the alderman from the 22nd and the alderman from the 5th. If you introduce this, I'm going to take the tag. Like that.
No, that's fine, if you feel that way.
No, it's not, no, it's if
I
you feel
won't, I
that way,
won't, I
alderman.
won't, I will,
It's if you feel that way.
I will end with this resolution.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we amend Resolution 145 to include every department and division and bureau and Department of Public Safety, and not solely focus on the police department.
We need a little bit more specific language. You want to say.
Instead of a
first
resolution,
responders.
instead of a resolution honoring the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, I want it to be the Department of Public Safety.
Okay, some are making suggestions about saying, taking out Metropolitan Police Department, putting in first responders.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I believe our rules do require amendments to be written and follow a specific format. I would appreciate if we're gonna just, for continuity's sake, in the past, we've required people to jump through the proper hoops. If you're gonna do an amendment, I'd like that to happen in this instance too.
Yeah, that will happen, but he's just throwing his idea out here right now, I'm trying to. Where is this, our attorney here? We need to get him.
Probably in April.
Just a slight pause here.
While he's putting his amendment together, I guess we'll go to,
We could go to the next, were you finished with your question while you get the amendment together? So in other words, we could go to the next, alderman, and then let you get your amendment together, and come back to you.
I'm not finished, but I yield.
Okay. As soon as we get in, we can make that amendment. Go to Alderman Boyd.
The only comment that I have is, I agree that we need to come together as a unity. And so, until we come to the table, it's not gonna change. This resolution, I'm real clear, with me being a person of a police officer, that's why I jumped on it. But I don't support the badge. And so my question to me should be, and I know, Chair, this is probably not the question to ask at this time with this resolution, is with the badge that I had saw that had came on my email that the police were displaying with the protesters. So the question that I would like is to make sure to put on record, when O2 comes, that's a question that needs to be asked, why was that tolerated? Because that was a bad message sent to the community, not only the protesters, to the community. But I do support police 200%, and I support police, and like any other job, you have good ones and bad ones. And so until we get rid of the bad ones, it's not gonna change the whole eyes of the police department as a whole. So that's what I'm asking, saying publicly.
You like me though.
No.
Damn.
Were you completed first?
Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I don't think there's any other people in here. He's getting it. I want to give us a 5-minute break so you can get this together. We can consider
You're
it.
the man, you're the man.
Point of order, we'd like for the parliamentarian to include the protester in the resolution also.
When we have our break, you can speak to this. No, it's not gonna be, we don't, it's not open.
At least Cleo's,
It's just a committee, regular committee.
at least Cleo's been quiet today.
Yeah.
It's been doing good behavior. Good behavior. I've seen Cleo nine times.
The meeting of the Public Safety Committee is now called back to order. We need to establish a quorum. Would you just confirm we have a, we confirm that we have a quorum? Yes, sir.
It still says Metropolitan Police Department.
Still an error.
Oh. Okay, then I can go ahead.
Just line it out.
What's the problem?
Hmm.
What was the error?
The title.
Oh. Jeffrey, that could be we can call that Scribbler's error and move on.
We can. Let's, oh,
We'll call it.
just let you know, we're gonna move on. Can you correct it?
Mr. Chairman, and then we'll change the resolution for first responders.
First response.
Yeah. And change it to resolution for first responders.
You read
Okay, you owe me $1 for coming up with that.
He's gonna make those, and we're gonna move on. We have completed.
I'm blaming this now.
I took it from Alderman Moore.
Oh, right.
From Alderman Moore, Sam's not giving no money. Oh,
Okay then, we'll recognize, Alderman Mohammed.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to, amend resolution number 145 with amendment number 1.
Would you go over it for us?
Yes, sir.
What will be the changes?
Yes, sir. The changes to resolution 145 are as to amend said resolution by striking out in its entirety paragraph 3 and further amending said resolution by removing all references to the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department in lieu therefore inserting them with first responders.
You make that as a motion.
Yes, sir. I make the motion to amend resolution 145 with amendment number 1.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we adopt amendment number 1 to resolution 145. Discussion.
Yeah, I would actually. I would support the, all responder, but first responders, because firefighters work too in it, but taking out that paragraph is where I disagree. So, I mean, so, just so you know.
Right, so you're on the record. Alderman Boyd, you have anything? Question?
Just from a process standpoint, I would prefer not to change the intent of another colleague's resolution or bill, if that's what they put forward. I think the amendment, although very noteworthy and probably creates some balance, I think it changes the intent, which I still disagree with, by the way. But I think if we as aldermen are presenting resolutions and board bills based on whatever our frame of reference is, then we should be allowed to do so. Now, if there's something in it that would make it a little better but doesn't change the intent, I can support that. But just from a process point of view and out of respect, I'm not gonna support the amendment.
Alderman Arnowitz?
Nothing at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Alderwoman Hubbard?
No comment.
Okay. Alderman Coulter?
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Boyd?
No comment.
Your motion, Alderman, have any closing remarks?
No, sir, I renew my motion.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt amendment number 1 to resolution 145. Discussion on the motion, will you please call the roll?
Alderman Boyd,
No.
Alderman Vaccaro,
No.
Alderman Cone, Alderman Arnowitz,
Pass.
Alderwoman Hubbard. Aye. Alderman Kotar.
No.
Oh, shit. Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Muhammad,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Pass.
Alderman Cone, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Arnowitz,
No.
Alderwoman Boyd,
I feel the same way. No,
said no.
yeah.
Chairman Kennedy, 3 yes votes, 4 no votes.
By your vote, you fail to sustain the motion from the Alderman.
5 no votes.
Yeah, 5 no.
Yeah,
Okay.
5 no.
That takes us back to the original amendment, original resolution. With no further discussion. Is there any other discussion?
I would like to, again, number one, Alderman, I would ask if you would hold the resolution. I have a lot of trepidation about voting for it. I don't see a lot of good coming out of it as a body. I think it adds another flashpoint to already tense emotions, you know, with colleagues of the Board of Aldermen. Again, notwithstanding the fact that the police department do a courageous, phenomenal job every day. I had the great fortune of serving 20 years in the military, and I could tell you that there's no way a general would honor troops in the field before the mission is complete. You would wait until the soldiers return and give them accolades for a job well done, with the understanding that you may have lost some along the way, that there may have been a lot of stressful situations, that there might have been a lot of hurt feelings. But the timeliness, again, of this resolution, I don't think it's right. I think it's, you know, inappropriate at this time because the mission is not complete. And for me, it's a principle, you know, Stan. It's not about, again, you know, against the police. I hate being in a situation when it's a lose-win. I like to support win-win strategies. I almost feel like this resolution is a lose-lose. If it comes out of committee, I'm sure there'll be 3 hours of debate on the floor, and there's gonna be a lot of hurt feelings. And there are gonna be people walking away being talked about you're not for the police. You're for the protesters, and so on and so forth. And I don't think that's fair. And, you know, on principle, and again, with the understanding that the mission is not complete, we could hold this resolution until we resolve the crisis that's going on in the city of St. Louis with the protest movement. Hopefully we can get an end game with some positive resolve at the end of it, and then we can all celebrate. And when I say all celebrate, I agree with the alderman from the 21st that we should celebrate everybody that's emergency responders. Because we have correctional officers that are overburdened, sheriffs that are overburdened, EMTs that are overburdened. We have all of our emergency responders overburdened. And they should all be celebrated equally. And with that, I would just ask that you hold this resolution until mission is complete.
And as much respect as I have for you, and we work together on a lot of things, I just feel like if we did that, it just basically kills it, and I don't want that, so I would still respectfully ask that we vote it out today. And again, the vote is only to bring it to the floor for discussion.
Alderman Ornowitz,
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Hubbard? Anything else? You say nothing?
No.
Alderman Coker?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Alderman Muhammad?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman, I do support our police department, and I support our police officers that are truly walking the beat, protecting and serving. And I thank the children for being a part of that department and being first responders. However, I will not support this resolution still.
And I respect that. I respect your position in this. There's no, there,
I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Get a phone call. That was the next person to call. You know, it is, I haven't made any statements as a chair, so I'd like to take an opportunity. You know, it is unfortunate that on various issues, it's always these absolutes. Either you're all over here or all over there. And life really oftentimes is not like that. It is a combination of different dynamics. And so the notion that you can support a resolution honoring the mother of someone who has been killed does not mean that you do not support the other individuals. But it gets played in the media and people get to talking about it, and now they tweet as if it's an absolute, and that you as a person cannot be more multidimensional and support both based upon principle. And so here we are with this resolution, to an extent, another absolute. The question that I see here for this committee, which is the question, as to whether or not we send this back to the full board for a larger discussion, knowing the possibility of the type of firestorm that this create on that body, on the floor. It could. It could, it could not. But from my experience, it will. And so it is, my point is, it's simply unfortunate that we have to always think of things in these absolutes. And I think as a board, it doesn't help to think of it in those ways. And to see, I think we should see it as more dynamic and more fluid than what it oftentimes gets played in the press. So that's just my comment as a chair. You and I have worked together on a lot of different issues, and
Oh,
we
no, no.
continue to do so.
absolutely, Terry, I
Yeah.
agree. You know, and as chair, you got the right to say, yes, we're voting, or no, we're not. I'm just asking that we do,
That's your vote, right.
but it's your call, you're the chairman.
We're
I
gonna
would
take a
not,
vote.
not ever disrespect you.
Yeah,
Uh,
I appreciate
We
it.
work together on 6 tons of stuff, and we're gonna continue to
We'll
do
continue
so,
to do it.
as all the members of the board of this organization. That's the one thing that I have to say about us. In the 9 years I've been here, we've been in battles on one side and the other. We always come back together because the teams change all the time. You know, this week we're not on the same thing, next week we could be. So, you know, so anyway, but that's kind of where I'm at on this. I just, I either want to, I just, I don't know, I would think not doing anything says that we're just killing the bill, and I don't agree with that.
We'll recognize you for, I don't believe we took a formal motion to pass the resolution. You want to mention,
Yeah, then I
recognize you
would-
to make the motion.
Then I would make the motion that we pass resolution 145 out to the full board for discussion
With a due pass
with a
recommendation.
due pass recommendation.
Then, is there a second on the motion?
Or,
Second.
I could alter that a little bit. Would you want to pass it out of here without with no recommendation? Not actually a due pass or a do not pass, but pass it out with no recommendation to be debated at the full floor?
It's your motion.
Well, I just don't know what everybody's comfortable with. If it goes to the full floor, I'm happy. So I guess I'm asking an
The
opinion.
Alderman here, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, so if you're willing to do that, couldn't you be willing to hold it for a couple more weeks?
No. No, I would either say we do it like that, or if, and I was asking the chairman if he's more comfortable, that we pass it out to the full floor with no, you know, as opposed to due pass recommendation.
It doesn't.
Okay, then my motion would be the same then, that we pass it as a do pass.
And we had second from Alderman.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we pass resolution 145 out with a do pass recommendation. Any discussion on the motion? If not, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Boyd,
No.
Alderman Vaccaro,
Aye.
Alderman Cone, Alderman Arnowitz,
Pass.
Alderwoman Hubbard,
No.
Alderman Kotar,
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Mohammed,
No.
Alderwoman Boyd,
No.
Chairman Kennedy,
No.
Alderman Cone, Alderman Arnowitz,
I said I'd vote aye earlier, so aye. But I don't think this resolves
No,
everything.
it's not resolving anything.
Alderwoman Spencer, 3 yes votes, 5 no votes.
By your vote, you failed to sustain the motion of the Alderman.
23rd.
23rd. Okay, then. There's no other agenda items? Then the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.